This week in Counter-Strike, S1mple and Electronic are reunited. It's been a good week for Brazilian Counter-Strike with Furia and Legacy both winning their respective tournaments, and FaZe bomb out in their debut. So we'll start by talking about this move. Electronic goes to BC.Game. Now, I really wasn't expecting Electronic to be the player that they announced, but I guess it makes sense if you're living in the past, and of course you're thinking about the old S1mple and Electronic duo. I mean, I guess there's a world where they can maybe run it back without Electronic having to IGL, because we know he hasn't had the best performances while he's been IGLing. It's actually his worst year so far in his entire career. He's got a .91 for 2025, but overall, I'm not really 100% sold on this move yet until they play, which by the time this video is out, they will have already played their first official, so you can let us know how it goes. But what do you think about this, Phil?
Austin, I think you're being too nice. This move it's terrible. This is a terrible move. Look, it's nice. You have on paper the names. If you brought us back to 2015 and someone said, buddy, we're going to have S1mple and Electronic on the same team in 2025. Isn't that insane? You're still going to see them playing together. This is not what you are hoping for, okay? Electronic is a shadow of himself. And the thing is, when he swapped to IGLing, it was like a month before two players said they wanted to leave the team. It's Electronic that brought in, that's an Electronic as IGL that brought in Flamus and couldn't use him and then got removed from the team. It seems like players just didn't want to play with him. Everything around Electronic seems to have been terrible in that last team, and individually, he's not the same player. This is, on paper, if you just bring someone from 10 years ago, they would think this is a good move, but if you're watching the game, I think this move is it's not really a great, I mean, look, maybe it's an upgrade over the players on the roster, but is it, it's not like we want BC.Game picking up, we wanted them picking up Elige. We want them picking up like top tier players to make the next step. You know, you don't want them picking up Electronic.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I am being too nice, but I can see where this would be good. Do I think it is going to be good? I mean, not really, but I guess there's a world where if Electronic can go back to rifling, presumably he's still rifling on this team and he wouldn't be IGLing. I hope, I pray.
No, I think he's going to be opping us.
No, dude, shut up. Okay. But if he can maybe get back to some sort of form going through tier 2, granted, I think VP's been tier 2, but it doesn't really matter. If he can maybe get that confidence, be back with S1mple, who knows? Maybe we'll have some sort of honeymoon period because, I don't know how else this could work out. I was really hoping they would announce Rain. I'm still holding out hope, but we haven't heard any news.
That would be a much better move.
It would be 10 times better. I mean, I guess there's still a world where Rain could be on this roster. I mean, it's obvious that BC.Game is taking this route of they want to build a team that has a bunch of good players on it, but this seems like a slight misstep, but there's still a lot of time to course correct. Today's video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey. Now, if you're not familiar with SkinsMonkey, this is a trade site that allows you to take some of the old and crusty skins out of your inventory, and you can actually trade them in for something a little bit new, a little bit shinier than what you have right now. And it's really easy to do this, actually. All you need to do is log in through Steam, pick the skins that you don't want to use anymore, grab the ones that you do, and then click trade. All trades will pretty much happen immediately, and any balance that you don't use in your trade actually stays on the site for you to use for any future trades that you decide to do. And right now, if you use the link in the description, you can actually get a 35% deposit bonus, and that's good for up to $100. So let's say you deposit $100, you would actually get $135 on the site if you use my link. So make sure you check out SkinsMonkey, and let's hop right back into the video. And speaking of course correction, that's exactly what VP has been doing recently, because now they don't have Electronic, and as of 5 minutes ago, they just benched Icy, which is something that I know you're pretty excited about. You're not a big Icy fan.
Listen, okay, I said this before, and I still, I've been workshopping this one, but I truly think that Icy is the opper that everyone always accused Jame of being, okay? Zero impact, he'll have a pop-off round in a game, but, and somehow he'll end a game with reasonably good stats where it'll be like, oh, he didn't actually do that bad, but then if you watch it, it's 10 bad rounds and one really wicked sick round, and that's it. It's terrible. He has been my least favorite opper in tier 1 for a while, and I think that with a really good opper, that VP team has some potential, or at least they have in the past had some potential. I think they could do things, and Icy ain't it for me.
Obviously, Icy had a lot of potential when he was first breaking out onto the scene, but I don't think we've seen any amount of that really since he's joined VP. And you talk about some opera that could maybe join VP to make them better. I know we've said it for a few teams now, but there is actually no reason why they shouldn't pick up Dagster. He's still a free agent. This is a Russian team. This is the move. You have to. If you're a VP and you don't pick up Dagster, I don't know what happens next. I really have no idea who you go for. I don't know if there's even any other option. I think it's the only move that will like make people excited to watch VP again, because we all know that that's not a team that people like to watch.
I mean, that's the obvious like name, but I feel like you could have said Dagster is an obvious pickup for like 2 or 3 different teams this season. So who knows if that's going to happen. I think you can pick up an opera from tier 2, tier 3 that could have a lot of potential, that could do things with VP, that they could make a move on. If you want to talk about a move that would be exciting, I'd like to see Dagster go to that team. I think that's a great move. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and it could just be like an opera coming from tier 2 that could save them. Like, I do see a case for this. I mean, that's exactly what Furia did. They just grabbed Molodoi out of nowhere, and now look at them. They're winning. This is their second event. They just won Thunderpick, and despite Na'Vi choking the final, I think Furia have been one of the most fun teams to watch in CS in a long time. And I'm really impressed that they're able to keep up this form. Now, granted, Vitality and Spirit were not at this event, but I think that that's exactly the kind of event that they have to win, though. Like, yeah, you're expected to win these events when the big dogs aren't around.
I think you have different types of teams. You know, for a lot of early this year, Mongols and Aurora, you might say, are like spoiler teams that can beat the top teams but aren't going to make necessarily a deep run. Then you have teams like, I mean, G2 at London was a great example. If their players all show up, they can make a move, but when they don't necessarily have like the foundational backbone to really consistently find deep runs, maybe the way a team like Mao's can, who can beat always the teams that are ranked below them. And it's nice to see Furia kind of make continual steps forward, going from initially kind of more of an upset team that they could pick up some wins, but they could still lose to some weaker teams. And then you look at them as they continue forward. They talked about, we want to make a step forward from being a top 10 team to being a top 5 team. And they had some hurdles to go through. They lost to a couple of weaker teams, I think, while they were trying to do that. But I think they are making that step to being a very close to a top 5 team, arguably a top 5 team that can actually make runs. Maybe you could start putting them, if they keep this up, a little bit higher, but you have to see them win maybe a tournament or two against the likes of Vitality, against the Spirit, before you can say they can go too much further.
I mean, me personally, I would definitely put them in contention for that 5th spot in the top 5. I think that they looked really good. And they passed one of the biggest tests, I feel like, that you have for a team like this, which is they won this final, this best of 5 final, without Molodoi or Yakinder really doing anything special. They were both at the bottom of the scoreboard, and that's because Keserado, Yuri, and Fallen were all playing pretty well the entire time. And I think that that's actually what you need if you want to be a top 5 team. You can't only rely on your star players. And I mean, unless you're, Spirit and you have Donk, but it's really a good showing. But one thing that I actually want to talk about when it comes to this specific final is how bad Na'Vi choked, because they were up 2-0, and I don't know how many times it's happened. It's definitely less than 5, but the full reverse sweep on stage, it's a terrible feeling. And in the last map, they just get 13-1. Like, that's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, teams have talked about in the past that you go down 2-0, and it kind of just feels like, do I even really want to win at this point? Like, I don't think that's, it might not, but that's the impression that the comments I've heard from players been like, especially in MR15, where it's like, you go down 2-0 and it's like, do I really want to win? Because then I'm going to have to play another 4 hours of this best of 5, and we might just get to map 5 and lose anyways. Like, the motivation to win when you're down 2-0, I think is actually incredibly hard to come by. But I mean, of course, it's going to be a bit better at MR12, but this isn't the first time I think we've seen Na'Vi put on a little bit of a choke fest. I mean, I was at an event where they did this recently against M80. They had, I think it was to make playoffs at London, I think it was to make playoffs at London. They were playing M80. They were up, I think, 11-8 or 11-9 or something, and then M80 just go for back-to-back B hits, and Na'Vi just crumble. It's interesting because this is a team you would never expect to be saying this about Na'Vi, that they are a team that could choke. I mean, they've had so many times where they've not choked, but it does feel like there's something there, and it feels like it's happened a few times recently.
It's realistically just ever since JL left the team. Like, I mean, they were not a top team, like contending team, when JL was on the roster, at least towards the end. But when they were in those finals, they were always coming out on top, and that's when, of course, they won the major against FaZe. They had that really cool Pro League best of 5 against, I think at the time they were still Eternal Fire. And yeah, I mean, this is just like, it's really devastating, especially when Na'Vi is a team that I think a lot of people have been pointing to as they might have to make a roster change coming up, very underwhelming results. And for this event to go the way it did, I still feel like there's definitely a case for after the major, we're going to see a different lineup for Na'Vi.
Austin?
Yes.
Let me hit you with this one. Okay, you have Electronic to BC.Game. What we really wanted was JL to BC.Game. That would have been a good move, right?
I actually I think that would be amazing. Now that Electronic's on the team, though, I'm not so sure. But I do think that JL joining BC.Game would make a lot of sense. I don't really know if JL is going to be continuing his player's career. I mean, I know he said he was going to, and he hasn't been retired. I put retired in quotes for that long, but I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens. If he does come back, I'd love to see him play on BC.Game. Maybe we get Rain, JL. I know I keep saying Rain, but Rain, JL, S1mple's, Nexa. I mean, I think it could be good. It could be good. That's something that I would like to see.
I mean, it's hard to know if JL stopped playing. Maybe like if it was mainly that he was just burnt out, or it was one of those things where like he was a bit burnt out. But sometimes you get burnt out if you're just not enjoying the environment you're playing in and you have to play in it all the time, right? Like if you're just in a more fun environment, for example, if you're playing with s1mple and Electronic, known for being very fun players to play with, maybe it would feel a little better.
That's true, I suppose. But I mean, I think there's no way that JL would turn down the opportunity to play with s1mple if he did get that offer when he returned. But I know that they declined his request for a helicopter ride every month, so maybe he won't be joining the team.
For him and his wife.
And his wife, the helicopter ride. So we did just talk about that Furia victory, but it's actually been a really good week for Brazilian Counter-Strike because Legacy actually won the, what is this? The
China-Asia Championship?
The China-Asia Championship. I kept seeing CAC, and I had no idea what it stood for. But I saw that the China-Asia Championship, yes, Legacy won their best of 5 against 3D Max, which is, of course, a great win for them. Nothing but good things to say about that team. I mean, I wouldn't say they're the best team there, and they walked away with the trophy. But there is a lot to say about this event because I think that the teams that we wanted to go far really didn't make a dent, which is, of course, FaZe and Liquid. Both of them not really doing what I was expecting. FaZe didn't make playoffs with their debut, and Liquid did lose in the semis to 3D Max, which it's an acceptable loss, but it's still underwhelming. I wanted to see a FaZe Liquid final.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can also look at this from kind of some of the positives. Like this Foot team is actually pretty damn good, and they are the team that gave FaZe their losses. Actually, they're like their only losses. FaZe go in, they lose to Foot in the best of 1, they beat Bait, they beat Tyloo, and then they lose to Foot in the best of 3. And sometimes maybe you have a team that just kind of has your number. I wasn't able to watch too much of either of those games, and I want to actually go back and watch them after we're done here because I mean, Demon pulled off some great plays. I've liked that Foot team. I've seen them play in the past, and I've liked a lot of what they're putting out.
Junior.
Yeah, exactly. And I've liked a lot of what they're putting out. They were just too good to be a Na'Vi Junior roster, right? So they go to this other organization. I think they've done some solid things, but you want to see them make maybe that next step from being, like I said earlier, you can have a team that plays the spoiler and they can beat a top team, but they can't make that deep run themselves. That's what they feel like the spot they're in right now. And from the Liquid side, the most interesting thing to me, and I almost made a video on this, guess who their highest rated player in the last month is, Austin? It's not a leash. It's not ultimate.
It's gotta be
It's
Naf.
not Nerds. I'm not saying Naf is the best player on Liquid again. I'm just saying Naf is Canadian, and Canadians are statistically the best player on Liquid in the last month. Okay, they're Canadians are just carrying this fraudulent roster. Okay. I mean, they have a ways to go as a team. I think there's a lot that, there's a lot of improvement that could still be done. You could see against 3D Max. 3D Max is just a better team than Liquid. I have faith though, because Naf I mean, come on, man. He was so bad for several months, and he's actually like, he's not pulling off consistently amazing performances, but he's pretty good now.
They said they believed in him after last season. They didn't make any changes immediately, and I guess maybe he's finally come around to starting to play well. I mean, they still lost this event. I would have expected them to win given the teams that were in attendance, but I mean, there is something to what you're saying. You're right. NAF has turned it around, and now that Elige is there, I do think that we're going to see Liquid be back in the top 10 as a team that we actually will not see lose to every team that they're supposed to be, which is great. I'm looking forward to that. On the FaZe side of things, though, I got to be honest, I did watch their games, but it wasn't because I wanted to see how good they were going to be. I was really hoping, I was hoping that that what happened. And I'm just going to say this, okay? Even though
Hold on. You were preying on their downfall because they removed Rain? Is that what you're saying?
I think that Foot played fantastic. I think that almost every time FaZe had an advantage, they threw it away. Whether that be big leads, whether that be man advantage situations, they were throwing them away. And all I'm going to say is that my GOAT would never lose to a Foot.
Okay, Austin, if you don't like them losing advantage situations, if you don't like them throwing 5v4s, 4v3s, those types of rounds, are you even a FaZe fan? Because that's FaZe Counter-Strike, baby.
Yeah,
in all
but
iterations. Forever.
I remember my FaZe team when it had Rain. They were actually able to throw games like that and still make deep runs in the tournament. When's the last time FaZe hasn't made playoffs or snuck through in playoffs when they didn't belong? I mean, they just did it at Pro League.
Many times this season.
No, they just did it at Pro League, and they still they're known for that team. Like you said, they go down there in the 2-2 game, and they make it to playoffs. They upset. They're in the semifinals. Everybody's like, oh my God, FaZe is going to win everything. And then they don't. That's what I know. Now they're not even making the playoffs at this event where no top 5 teams are in attendance. I mean, look, I'm not going to say I'm happy to see it, but I'm just hoping that eventually they come to their senses, and it's not too late. I promise it's not too late. They could bring Rain back off the bench. He's still there. Have him replace Jacob. And no offense, but have him replace Jacob, because the lineup with Rain just got 4th at Pro League. This one got 5th or 6th at the CAC. It's fine.
I mean, it's obvious that Jacob has a ways to go. He's still, but I said this when he first joined the team. He has a ways to go. He's gonna take some time. But people called me crazy because statistically he was doing pretty decent, and then when statistically he starts doing what he looked like he should have been doing initially, everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's terrible." Look, he's a player that has a ways to go. He's got some growing to do. I think he's actually choked in some situations. But when he chokes, he kind of turtles up sometimes. And it might be that they're trying to get him out of that. Maybe they try and force him to play more aggressive. That makes him even more uncomfortable. I don't think he's a lost cause. I don't think you should... Listen, even if I agree that Rain made more sense to keep, there is no way that I can support the idea of just saying, oh, couple bad events, fuck out of here, Jacob, get the fuck out. Like, no, I cannot support that. Okay, if in 2 months Jacob isn't significantly improved, then we can talk about it. But if they were to remove 2 months, him buddy. Now, that would be awful.
It would be awfully good for FaZe if they want to get back to good, back to the top 10. Either way,
yeah, Rain's gonna carry them back to the top 5.
I believe Rain. I would follow him into battle. I would do anything
Austin,
for that guy.
Is Rain a top 10 rifler of all time?
Yes.
Is he a top 5 rifler of all time?
To me, yes.
Next topic.
So, I don't really know a good way to transition into this one, but Config retired.
Just like Rain should.
Config retired, and I don't remember the last time he was even on a team. How long has it been since he's been competing?
I believe it's been over a year since he's had at least a tier 1 or maybe even an HLTV game at all. I honestly I saw that he had retired, and I went, oh yeah, that guy's still not retired.
That's what I did too, which is kind of a shame because Config was somebody who was one of the best players in the world. At least when I first started watching, everybody was hyping him up on every team that he was on. And I think that Config will always be one of the biggest what ifs in Counter-Strike history. There was always like the what if he went to Astralis? What if he would have got the chance to join a team like FaZe? But we never got to really see it, and now he's a player agent. Maybe I should hit him up. I'm looking for a team after all. That is what he did, right? It's a player agent. He said he's becoming an agent.
He did. It's funny though because like Config and KRB, I don't really get them mixed up, but sometimes in my head I take a second to remember which one is which, just because the names are similar. But they've both got these similar things that happen where they just like they are like kind of what ifs talent wise. Like Config always had a lot of talent, but never really actually delivering on it. It's Caribbean, kind of the same thing. Caribbean once said that like winning major MVP was one of the worst things that could have happened. I think he said that because he won it too young. But then Caribbean, I don't know if you remember this. Now he's like a masseuse, or he's a physical therapist or something. He was giving out massages at the major at some point at one of the majors.
That's pretty fire.
He was like, yeah. And then you have Config going and being a player manager. Maybe like the realization of like, oh, I had all this talent and ability and I've kind of like just not delivered on it. Maybe that means that like they kind of get a surge of motivation going into their next like path and they want to kind of fix things. I like this statement where he said like, I don't know exactly the situations he's talking about, but I think he said like, I don't want people to go through what I went through in my career in terms of like, I think he just thinks he's signed some bad contracts. So that is an interesting look, especially for a player to go in. And maybe he could reason with players a little bit more, because when we look at contracts in the past, it's been such a talking point. We don't see it as much now, but it's definitely been a talking point for years in League of Legends. You see it in StarCraft, you see it a lot, but in CS you saw it for a long time. Players just look at the dollar value and they sign the contract. So they don't look at like, do I really want to be streaming 15 hours a week? Do I really want to be doing all of these obligations? Do I like that maybe my bench, like the amount I'm making when I'm benched is really low, or my buyout is insanely high? They just go bigger dollar value, better. Right? And maybe a player like Config, maybe that's one of the mistakes that he made, that he couldn't get out of contracts because he didn't like think about this type of thing, and players often don't. And maybe he can reason with players and actually make them understand what is important in a contract, whereas a normal agent might struggle with that because they weren't players in the past.
Honestly, I think that's a really good take, and I didn't even think about that at all. It's a good field to go in, especially as an ex-player, and I have a lot of respect for him for stepping into that role, because there's not a lot of people who are experienced that can guide players. Because one thing that you didn't actually say that I wanted to talk about was people sign bad contracts and they end up in contract jail, where they aren't playing, and you see careers completely snuffed out by one bad contract, like Bubsky.
Dexter.
Yeah, there's a lot of players.
I mean, potentially. Yeah.
There's a lot of players that have been taken away by bad contracts. And so having an ex-player who's probably seen that happen hundreds of times now, who can kind of guide people in the right direction, I think is just nothing but a good thing. And
I mean, as long as he can do it well.
Right. And speaking of good things, I think we just got one of the better updates in CS2, which is this change to Defusing. I don't really care about the rest of the patch notes, but this change to Defusing in particular, I thought was pretty cool. But I'll tell you why right after Vu tells me why I'm an idiot.
I'll defer to you on this one at least a little bit, because I think maybe I'm just so used to not planting in the bad spots, but I just feel like there's so few locations where you can actually have someone defuse while looking at an angle. And when I see people use examples, I saw someone use an example of you can defuse from default on Mirage on A looking at Palace, and it's like, no. Or you can defuse, like, look, you can be looking in the general direction of something, but you can't, are there really that many spots where you can be looking at a position? Because the one that pops out in my mind, nuke, everyone's done it once or twice. You plant beside the silo, and then someone defuses looking at mini from beside the silo, and you're playing mini. I think that has happened, maybe not in like a match, but like everyone's had that happen. They go, well, never planting there again. Like,
yeah,
that's the main one that comes to mind. And maybe you have like Cat on Mirage, but like the cat plant on Mirage, but like, are there really that many where you can truly, I'm thinking like B on Anubis, where if you planted badly, sometimes you could have someone kind of like looking at E-Box. I think if you planted badly enough, looking at E-Box, that's the main one that came to mind. There's only a few where you can really be looking at it.
There's actually a lot. There's default on B, Inferno, where you can look CT. There's triple on A, Mirage, where you can look CT as well. Both of those I've seen a lot of kills. A site on
you can't
Ancient,
be looking CT though. You can be looking like
you can actually
near CT.
You can look up a little bit more. I think you're misremembering about how much you can look up. You can't look like straight up like to like Palace, like you said earlier, but you can look. At least to my knowledge, you could before, because I remember getting kills with like the op, like I'm posted on somebody and they swing immediately. But either way, yes, I agree that part, like there's not a ton of like change to that. There's not a lot of areas affected, but the reason why I like this change is because that 150 millisecond delay means that you have to think a little bit more mindfully about how you're playing these situations. Not being able to scope.
That's the worst part. That's the worst part.
No, that's the best part, because not being able to scope while you're on the bomb, I think that's like a meaningless change. But I like the direction of these kinds of changes, because this is something that actually changes the game. And we don't get a lot of changes like that anymore.
How does it change the game?
It changes how you have to think about the game, and I think that we don't get a ton of changes that are like that anymore. And even if it's a bad change objectively in the end, I'm in the camp of I'd like changes like this that change how I have to think about the game, so I don't come into a routine.
But this is the thing. I don't think this changes the way you have to think about the game, Austin.
It changes very like small parts of the game. Like one round every week you might have be different. Which, I don't know.
How often are you really sticking the bomb and thinking, okay, so one of the things is like, I think that the positions where you could defuse while looking at an angle, sometimes they were kind of situational in themselves. Like you could also be defusing, like Banana on Inferno. You could be looking at that while defusing the bomb theoretically, but you have to come at it from the right angle. You have to kind of be set up right, where you didn't see people do that all the time. So it was kind of somewhat situational. And then you go into these spots, it's like, how often are you really thinking, okay, I'm going to be sticking the bomb, but I'm not looking directly at the spot, but I'm going to be sticking the bomb in a spot, like I said, where you can't be like posted holding E and then you just let go of E and shoot.
Yeah.
But that I'm also going to be shooting them. I'm planning on shooting them, and I'm going to be flicking to them off of the bomb. Like they're going to peek me and I'm going to flick off of the bomb to shoot them. Because if you're faking, the 150 milliseconds doesn't make a difference. And if you're waiting for a footstep, it doesn't make a difference. Like what scenarios does it really, like, I can't imagine me.
It only changes the ones where you immediately shoot, right? And I think that those, like, maybe I'm just too like, I see how new players look at the game, but that part also just doesn't make any sense. Like you would never be able to like defuse and shoot instantly. So I like the idea of just like, oh, for a newer player, like you have to reset, bring your gun back up before you can shoot. It's mostly a visual thing. It's going to change 1% of scenarios across all of Counter-Strike, if that. And I think it's an all right change. I like that they're changing stuff like this, something that I will have to think about next time I play. But
I don't think you're going to be thinking about it, Austin.
I do.
I don't think you. I think you've made some good points. I actually do think that maybe there is an argument that no, I like the idea that your weapon goes down. Maybe it's a little more intuitive for new players. Okay, maybe that it is a little bit. To me, it was always kind of just like, look, there's a few spots, just don't plant in them. Yeah. The spots where you're forced to plant there, like if you plant triple and you play CT, it kind of sucks. It feels like inevitable. Like you can't deal with it maybe, but you try not to play that angle. I feel like it's not a guaranteed loss. It's actually really uncomfortable for me holding mouse one, because what you would do is you hold mouse one and let go of E and you would shoot instantly. That actually fucked with my brain. Like I really struggle to hit shots when doing that, right? Like so it's one of those things where it feels like maybe you've made some good points that maybe there's an argument that it should be changed like that. But in my mind, I don't think you're going to be thinking other than that. I don't think it's something like the scope thing I actually hate, because it's already sticking the bomb is already like kind of rare and it's hype as hell. Like when someone fucking ninja defuses, that's one of the hypest things out there. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons I don't like this actually. This is sorry I didn't mention this earlier. This is one of the biggest reasons I don't like it. Ninjas are sick, okay? And this just removes the number of ninjas you're going to be getting. They're hype, dude. They're hype as hell.
I agree with you Kind of. I do think that part, not being able to scope, might get rid of some more ninjas in lower ranks. But I do think that at the higher level, I think everybody and their mother knows that you can scope while you're defusing. So because everybody knows, it doesn't matter if you do or if you don't scope while you're defusing, because everybody knows it doesn't change anything.
But now the difference is, it used to be that you start defusing and you can scope while defusing, and that means that if you scoped after faking, that they meant nothing. It meant you could not listen to a scope sound and know if they were on the bomb or not.
Right.
Now, an opper, I'm assuming you can't scope and then fake. You're faking and you have to stay unscoped?
Yeah.
That sucks.
I mean, that's true, but again, it comes down to you put your gun down, and I guess the idea is you wouldn't be able to scope while your gun is down. And
Austin, am I going to shoot you in the leg with an op and you're just going to be running at me? Okay, we're talking about realism. I throw a nade on top of you and you get hit for 50
with the animation change. If it was like that to begin with, nobody would say anything, but because we took it away, now everybody's upset. Okay, look, okay. In my opinion, this would change, like, I didn't think about that, but that would change a lot, because now, if somebody makes any sound cue off of the bomb, apart from, like, throwing nades,
can you drop guns still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if somebody makes any sound cue that has to do with, like, inputs, then you just, they're off. I think I think that's fine. I don't think that changes anything other than, like, the two specific, very niche, like barely happen examples. And I like the direction of Valve changing actual gameplay things that aren't going to destroy the meta. I don't want them to change the price of guns. I don't want them to add anything like, now the Deagle can 2-shot body kill again. Like, I don't want that. I want them to change how the actual game itself plays, because that's actually something that I can go, I have to rethink how I think about the game now. Just like the economy changes, and just like the C4 radius changes, even though most of those suck, at least it's something that I'm like, I have to think about this now. And it keeps me feeling refreshed, even though it actually is not even worth talking about as an update, because it doesn't change really anything. All that's to say,
actually, I
like this update.
I would say, actually, maybe the scope thing encourages ninjas, because now you can't fake. Like, as an opper, it's really uncomfortable to fake. But I actually think you make a pretty good point. Like, yeah, changing gameplay things that encourage new players is nice, and that just change things just a little bit. I think that's a good thing. I don't think this change is like a great change, but it's not bad. It's not like terrible. It's not like game changing. It's like one of those things where it's just like, maybe as like an old school fan, I'm just kind of like, I like the way it was. I don't want it to change. Yeah. I actually think you make a good point. I think I make
a lot of good points when it comes to the CS2 versus CSGO debate.
Very few when you're talking about Rain, though.
Nah, that's true. It's true. Look, I'm just glad that you're willing to hear me out instead of calling me fat, stupid, dumb, and ugly.
I just do that on my alt account in Twitch.
Yeah. So we saw FaZe bomb out, Brazilian Counter-Strike is back, and electronics saving Simple again. But that's just this week in Counter-Strike.